Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. On behalf of Thornton Bharat and my colleagues and industry expert, this is Krishan Arora, Partner Tax Planning and Optimization and India Investment Advisory Leader for the firm. And as your host, I'm delighted to welcome you all today in this webinar on navigating GSTAT, operational readiness, and way forward for the taxpayers. After years of anticipation, what was seen as once missing piece in the GST dispute resolution system has finally taken space. The GST Appellate Tribunal, GSTAT, the long-awaited appellate forum and final fact-finding authority under GST, has now been formally operationalized. This development marks not just an administrative milestone, but a transformative moment in indirect tax litigation framework. When GST was introduced, it promised a seamless three-tier dispute resolution system, as we all know, and that is adjudication by departmental authorities, appeal to the commissioner, which is commissioner appeals, and then to the GST tribunal before one finally approaches the High Court in case the matter is settled against them. But that third tier never took shape, and so for the past 8 years, the tax ecosystem has been functioning with a very crucial missing link. In its absence, taxpayers rushed directly to high courts, leading to mounting pendency, inconsistent interpretations across states, and a considerable strain on both taxpayers and the judiciary. I think the operationalization of GSTAT, therefore, marks a completion of the intended appellate architecture under GST, which will ensure that disputes now have a dedicated, specialized forum for resolution. The benches have been notified across the country, with hearings expected to commence from December 2025, paving the way for long pending disputes to finally move towards closure and consistency in its interpretation as well. That would be very relevant for the taxpayers and the appellants. I think the scale of pending litigation also underscores the importance of this reform. As per some data points which I have, the estimates there are about 4.8 lakhs cases which are pending before various GST appellate authorities across the country. It is not just static, but a reflection of an enormous capital blockage in disputes and the uncertainty it brings to the business decision making. Some reports also highlighted about 14,000 ready to transfer cases likely to move to GSTAT in the very initial phase. These numbers underscore both the challenge and the opportunity that GSTAT represents. But if executed efficiently, I think it can unclog a lot of, one of the biggest bottlenecks in the indirect tax system. But if not managed well, it could simply add another layer to the queue. Structurally, I think the tribunal is designed to bring parity, balance, and professionalism to tax litigation, which means a principal bench has been constituted, which is at New Delhi, alongside 31 state benches spread across 45 locations, each comprising of one judicial and two technical members, which will ensure both legal depth as well as practical expertise. The GSTAT Procedure Rules 2025, which were notified earlier this year, had laid down a detailed procedural code from e-filing templates and digital submission norms to case listing, adjournments, and review protocols. The GSTAT e-courts portal is already operational, offering a fully digital platform for filing and tracking appeals, marking a shift towards a paperless and time-efficient dispute process. And also to add, I think enabling a smooth transition, the government has provided a staggered window for filing legacy appeals by 30th June 2026. Thereafter, the normal 3-month limitation period will apply as per the law. This phased approach is pragmatic as it allows both taxpayers and administrators to manage filling volumes and focus first on the older, higher value disputes. However, the appellants will have to make an additional pre-deposit of 10% of the disputed tax subject to a cap. If you look at the broader picture, litigation under GST has steadily grown since its inception, even though we've seen the last, changes which have happened, which have eased out the tax rates and, bucketed them into two-rate structure. But at the same time, there are several reports which suggest that cumulative show cause notices issued may exceed several lakhs, spanning across issues involving classification, and valuation to ITC mismatches and procedural lapses and so on and so forth. With the GST authorities ramping up the enforcement in recent years, litigation volumes have only increased, particularly in high-risk sectors like online gaming, other similar sectors like real estate, infrastructure, FMCG, and financial services. Against this backdrop, the launch of GSTAT signals the beginning of a more mature phase of tax administration, which will be stable, consistent, predictable, and I think it will add the much needed transparency in the adjudication, which one can take finally root from. But while this establishment of GSTAT is a welcome development, it also raises practical questions. How prepared are taxpayers to navigate this new appellate framework? What are those expectations around timelines for case disposal, documentation standards, representation procedures? And importantly, how will GSTAT's functioning impact the broader goal of reducing litigation and enhancing compliance certainty? And these are some questions which need to be addressed and time will tell. To help us decode these questions and more, I'm joined by today a panel of experts who have been closely tracking this development both from a policy and industry standpoint. I have with me Mr. Naveen Keval-Ramani, who is a Group GST Head at ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel Group. My colleague Manoj Mishra, who is a partner and leads our firm's tax controversy management initiative. And Narendra Bharat, who is a chartered accountant based in Bangalore and has experience on working with many clients across industries on tax controversy and litigation support. Together, we'll attempt to decode what readiness really means a lot, not just in terms of compliance, but also from a perspective of strategy, mindset, and systems. Talking of some of the key agenda points, today's discussion will focus not just on the legal setup of GSTAT, but also what it means for taxpayers and the wider ecosystem. How can businesses align their documentation and processes to be appeal ready? What are the likely first-year challenges and gray areas? And what steps can industry take proactively to minimize litigation exposure going forward? These are some questions that will define the way forward for GST compliance and administration in the years to come. With that, once again, I thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We look forward to a session that is not just informative, but thought-provoking, practical, and forward-looking. I would encourage all participants to actively engage by submitting your questions in the Q&A boxes in your screens. Our team will try to address this in real time and towards the end of the session, wherever possible, making this session more meaningful for you all. With that, let me invite Narendra to set the stage with an overview of the current litigation landscape and how GSTAT's operationalization is poised to change the narrative. Over to you, Narendra.
Thanks, Krishna. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking time out today and joining us for this webinar. So, as Krishna mentioned, a very big missing piece from the dispute resolution under GST was the tribunal, and now tribunal has come into existence. So today in this webinar, we will try to understand the road that has been traveled to get the GST tribunal in place, structure of the tribunal, jurisdiction and the principal bench of the tribunal, what are the prerequisites for filing the appeal, and then we will also talk about some of the unaddressed issues which obviously as we progress and it will unfold before us. Yeah. So when GST was implemented in July 2017, the legislature always had provided for the tribunal, the provisions were there, and how the tribunal will be constituted and how it will operate. However, there were a lot of challenges in terms of constitutional validity of the provisions relating to setting up the GSTAT was challenged before various high courts. The primary issue was in terms of the constitution or composition of the members in the tribunal, and later on also there was demand that even advocates should be part of the bench. So all those issues to sort out, it took a lot of time, and relevant amendments were made to the act. And in May 2024, in his 53rd GST Council meeting, the guidelines and final rollout of GSTAT was announced, and the president was appointed. And in July 2024, president took oath and assumed the office. However, after that also, a lot of time was taken to set up kind of the benches, etc., and clear the groundwork for the same. And in August, November 24, the principal bench was notified, which was located in Delhi, and state benches were also notified along with the functioning locations. After that, in April 2025, the procedural rules for the tribunal was rolled out, which clearly defined how the things will work at the tribunal. And on 24th of September, the GSTAT portal has gone live, and post that, to manage the load on the tribunal and the system, staggered filing of appeal has been uh, notified by way of an order. That's a very important move. Otherwise, we have seen a lot of time that the either GST portal or even for that matter income tax portal with heavy load, it stops functioning, crashes, and then a lot of inconveniences there to the assessees. So to manage that workflow and load, staggered filing of window has been provided so that people can be sure which window they have to use to file the appeals. Yeah, so moving ahead. So now we'll talk about some of the key features of the GSTAT. In evolving technology, and in fact, when GST was introduced, focus has been to use technology in compliances, all the compliances, those are required, be it return filing, e-way bill, etc. And similarly, following that, entire GSTAT will function online and in digital mode. The portal is already, as I said, has gone live, and the filings of the appeal along with all the documents, etc., everything will be digital. Also, there is a provision to do the hearing virtually also. While physical mode is also there, but if assessee prefers to uh, attend hearing in person in a virtual mode, that can be applied to, and with president's approval or tribunal's approval, that can be also done. A wide network has been set up nationwide. While principal bench will be in New Delhi, there are 31 state benches across 45 locations. So that most of the states have their own state benches, and accordingly the matters can be handled in those states. To streamline the process of filing and operation of all the benches, clear rules have been prescribed under GSTAT rules, which lays down each and every aspect of the appeal life cycle, how appeals will be, in which form, in how the appeals will be presented, how the appeal will be accepted, how the cause list will be published. Everything has been clearly mentioned. In fact, to the extent that there were a lot of confusion earlier when earlier regime, even today, to count the period, let's say 3 months period, the rule clearly defines that which days to be excluded to compute the deadline, so that there is no confusion. Another important aspect is backlog. As patient mentioned, almost 5 lakh cases are there which will flow to tribunal. So the and also what was happening, because tribunal was not there, and lot of first appeal authority, either first appeal authority or due to investigations to seek relief, assessees were moving to high court, and in fact lot of volume was going to high court, and high court was getting clogged. So that will also be released, and now assessees will have window to go to tribunal also. That the rule also prescribes that certain application can also be moved before the tribunal. So that will obviously release some of the bandwidth at high court level and decongest there, and issues will be flowing to GSTAT. Another important aspect would be National Appellate Authority. So the principal bench of GSTAT will work as a National Appellate Authority. This will ensure that the advanced rulings which are coming, today there are a lot of divergent views, and even at the appellate forum, appellate authority for advanced ruling also, different states are taking different views. So a national bench will help streamline and uniform, and bring uniformity in terms of the views taken. So that will also be a positive development for the taxpayers. Now talking about the structure of the tribunal. So as I mentioned earlier, it's a dual structure. There will be a principal bench, there will be a state bench. Now, principal bench will have the president of the GSTAT will be sitting on the principal bench, and there will be a judicial member, there will be a technical member from center and technical member from the state. This bench will primarily function in Delhi, and it will have jurisdiction over specified issues which will be handled by the principal bench. For example, let's say any dispute which involves place of supply issue will be dealt by principal bench at Delhi, and any matter which has more than two states involved and it's an identical question, that will also go to principal bench. Any dispute relating to OIDR, that will also go to principal bench. Similarly, any dispute relating to input service distributor or any specified actionable claims like betting, money gaming, lottery, etc. Those which are specified as actionable claim, any dispute arising out of those transactions will go to principal bench. Whereas state bench will deal with all other matters other than which we discussed for the principal bench. Now, state bench will have two judicial members, though, and senior of them will become the vice president of that particular bench, and then there will be one each member from technical member from center and state. Now, there is a monetary limit basis which it will be decided whether a single member bench will take up the matter or matter will go to divisional bench. For any dispute or any appeal which has overall demand included, demand of more than 50 lakh or more will go to divisional bench, and any dispute which has question of law involved will go to divisional bench. Divisional bench composition will be one judicial member and one technical member. However, it does not specify the technical member should be from state or center. That is depending upon the availability of member that will be there. But however, the one judicial member and one technical member will be there in the divisional bench. Now, in single member bench, any dispute which is below 50 lakh will go, and there is no question of law as such involved. And so basically, any appeal which has factual issues involved and overall demand involved or disputed amount involved is less than 50 lakh will go to single member bench. And also here, single member bench, who will be the member, whether it will be a judicial member or technical member, that will depend upon the nature of dispute which is involved, and basis that the cases will be allocated. And so basically, single member bench, to be very precise, factual matter less than 50 lakh, divisional bench more than 50 lakh or more, and also cases where irrespective of the demand involved, if question of law is involved, it will go to division bench. Now, what is the flow of appeal? Where does tribunal fall in the hierarchy of judiciary? The dispute after adjudication is done. Once adjudication order is passed, the appeal lies before the first appellate authority, or it can go to revisional authority. Once appellate authority or revisional authority has passed order, second appellate authority, the appeal will lie before the tribunal. Now, if, as I said in previous slide, if the dispute is relating to place of supply, then it will go to principal bench of the GSTAT, and once the principal bench has passed the order, it will go to Supreme Court directly as way of appeal. Now, any dispute other than place of supply will go to High Court. The state bench will pass the order. Against that, appeal will be before the High Court, and then it will move to Supreme Court if relief is not available at High Court. Now, one question arises: if a particular order has multiple issues, and one of the issue is also place of supply issue, then where will that appeal be filed? That appeal will be filed before the principal bench, because it involves a place of supply. Even if other issues, there are other issues, but because the order has a place of supply related issue, it will go to principal bench of the GSTAT, and the appeal will be decided in entirety, including all other issues other than place of supply. Now, what is the appeal filing process under GSTAT? So there are certain stages which we have to follow to file the appeal. At pre-filing preparation level, one of the important thing, and I think is a good step that has been implemented, is that there is an offline Excel utility which is there. While it is not an utility which you feel then create a JSON and upload appeal, it's not that way. This offline Excel filing sheet helps you to prepare your documentation. It has the checklist, it has all the tabs which will be available in the online platform, which we have to fill online. You can fill, the SSC can fill that Excel sheet first and complete entire set of documentation, so that at the time of filing everything is available. Important thing is to note that all the supporting paper etc has to be scanned, and the documents size specified is 20 MB each, so that has to be ensured, and as specified in the filing sheet it has to be ordered in that sequence and uploaded once we go to that stage. Now, after we have prepared for the pre-filing preparation we have done, we need to access the portal and select our role, whether as a taxpayer I am filing the appeal, or I am the departmental officer, or I am filing the appeal through authorized representative. Basis the role, the portal has to be accessed, and once we go into the portal, we have to validate our slot. As I said, staggered appeal filing window has been prescribed, so we'll have to see whether my slot is active or not. And for that I need to enter ARN number or CRN number of the appeal. And if it is a digitally, if the appeal was filed online earlier at the first appellate stage, the details will be available. It will give the slot, yes, this is the slot you can file, and once your slot is available and active, you can go ahead and do the filing. So for filing, you have to create your login ID and you have to register on the portal. So the step 2 can be done before registering, because there is on the portal there is no other option to get registered first and then see the slot. So first you have to select the slot and then you go to the registration page. You have to provide the relevant details and accept the disclaimer, and you will get registered. And post that, you can start filing your appeal. So if your ARN or appeal at the first stage was online, most of the details will be available, and it will be auto-populated in relevant fields, and you can validate them, and basis that you can finalize. You can use that Excel sheet we talked about to kind of complete that. You can copy paste data from there because you have already prepared that, and that is a good reference point, you will not miss out. And after you have filed everything, you can generate the preview, validate everything, and then go to the payment page. So payment page again will calculate a pre-deposit required. We'll talk about in detail about pre-deposit and file later on, but at that stage in that page, amount will be reflected as payable. However, if as per SSC's calculation, the pre-deposit is coming lesser or a different number, the same can be manually put there along with the calculation how that amount has been derived at, and accordingly that amount can be paid. Again, like for longer period, GSTAT was not there. In many jurisdictions, the pre-deposits were already made by intimating officer the intention to file appeal. So pre-deposit have already been made, and those challans can be uploaded at this stage to comply with the pre-deposit requirement, and appeal will be, SSC will be able to file after digitally signing the appeal, and the acknowledgement will be available. Now, what are the prerequisites for filing the appeal? Like I said, there will be one pre-deposit required and an appeal fee also will be required. Now, pre-deposit will be 10% additional. At first appellate stage, we would have paid 10%, but at this stage also, again, additional 10% of the disputed tax amount we have to pay the pre-deposit, with a maximum ceiling of 20 crore rupees each under CGST and SGST. This additional duty, this pre-deposit can be paid out of in cash also or in credit. In case of penalty only cases, 10% of the disputed penalty has to be paid as pre-deposit. However, it is not clear if there is an appeal with only interest. there is no tax demand penalty, but interest is there, and assessee is contesting the interest liability. Whether pre-deposit will be required or not, that is not clear. So that is one of the question which has to be answered, or clarification has to be issued for that. Now, besides the pre-deposit, entire admitted dues has to be paid in full, along with applicable interest and penalty. And as I said, the pre-deposit can be made in cash or using credit. Again, another question which remains to be kind of clarified, where demand is only for RCM, whether the pre-deposit has to be paid only in cash or can be paid through credit, because otherwise we cannot make RCM liability, payment of RCM liability by using credits. So that also needs to be clarified. Now, coming to appeal fee, the appeal fee is 1,000 rupees per 1 lakh rupees of disputed tax ITC, and minimum of 5,000 and maximum of 25,000. And any appeal which doesn't have any demand of tax, interest and penalty, flat fee of 5,000 rupees is required. For example, let's say my refund has been rejected. So refund has been rejected, there is no demand on me, but I am contesting to get the refund back. In those cases, there is no demand of tax, interest, penalty, and hence the fee will be 5,000 rupees. Rectification application, no fee is required. Again, mode of payment, it has to be paid via GST portal, and it has to be paid in cash, and it is non-refundable irrespective of the outcome. Another thing is that where both CGST and SGST is involved in the appeal, fees for respective fees has to be paid under respective acts. So we'll just take a quick look in terms of staggered filing of appeal. While the normal due date or time limit for filing appeal is 3 months from the date of communication of the order, again, as I said, it has been clarified that when the date of communication, let's say today I have received the order, today's date will be excluded. And if the 90th day is falling on any public holiday or a declared holiday, then the due date will be next working day when GSTAT is operating. So that clarity has been provided, which was earlier always a issue in terms of computing the timeline. Now, as we discussed, a lot of backlog is there, so they have bucketed in terms of when the appeal was filed and order was issued. The due dates have been given. For example, let's say if the order has been passed on or before 31st January 2022, the due date to file the appeal would be, it will start from 24th September as the portal went live from that date, and 31st October. But it does not mean that post 31st October I cannot file. I can file, but till 30th June I have the time. That's the outer limit. But in the interest of time, because we have been waiting for long, it is advisable for taxpayer to use these windows and file the time within this periods. So sequentially, each period the timeline has been given. Now, if for any of the appeal which is filed manually, because initial days online filing was not available, those appeal can only be filed post December. So right now, which appeals can be filed? The appeals which are already digitized. That means digital mode appeals. And any appeal which is yet to be filed, or any order is yet to be issued and which is issued on or before 31st March 2026, that appeal has to be filed between 1st March 26 to 30th June 26. And obviously, any order passed after June 26, the timeline of 3 months will anyway applicable. Now, coming to hearing and proceeding before GSTAT, the cause list will be issued on a daily basis, and any urgent matter for which appeal has been filed before 12 p.m., the matter can be listed next day. Subject to that, the papers are complete in all respect. Further, any urgent matter for which appeal has been filed beyond 12 p.m. but before 3 p.m., the same can also be listed next day, but subject to President's approval or state bench tribunal's approval. That can also be listed. Mode of hearing, both hybrid is there. In person can be in-person hearing can also be attended, or virtually also hearing can be attended, but that has to be applied for. However, in the utility, the online utility which is there, as of now, there is no option to select the preference of hearing. I think that something can be, if added, will definitely help taxpayer, so that preference can be indicated at the time of filing only. Now, hearing order and adjournment, first appellant will be heard and then respondent will be given opportunity. And again, appellant can again counter argue if there is anything. Adjournment can be at the request of the party, but it has to be before the bench, and adjournment has to be requested. In exceptional cases, registrar can adjourn, but however, in chamber approval has to be taken by the registrar, and maximum of three adjournments each party. Like previously we had the same thing, so more than 3 adjournments will not be allowed. Now, if cause list has been issued, my matter is listed and assessee fails to appear, the tribunal can dismiss the case or pass the order on merit also. However, the same can be also reinitiated after assessee has to request to the bench, and if bench permits, the same can be reinstituted. And if respondent fails to appear, the matter can be decided ex parte by the bench. Admission of evidence and affidavits, the same can be filed. Any new evidence which assessee wants to adduce has to be with approval of the bench, and once approved, then only that can be submitted. So it is very important that at the time of filing of appeal, thorough preparation is done in terms of documentation, so that whatever grounds we are going to take, we are able to substantiate, and it is complete in full respect. Further, witness and tribunal has power to summon anybody to witness in the case, and in-camera proceedings are also allowed for confidential witness, etc. Next. Now, very important is the preparedness for taxpayers, because a lot of issues, there will be various entities which will have multiple cases also pending. So the companies needs to evaluate and see how many cases are there which has to be appealed before the tribunal, and they need to classify the cases, because I have to decide which bench to where to file the appeal, whether there is a place of supply issue involved, whether there is a question of law involved, or is it only factual, what is the total demand involved. Basis that I have to finalize my jurisdiction. So that assessment has to be done, and therefore it is very important to assess that. Now, litigation mapping and jurisdiction, again, all the documents, etc., needs to be digitized. As I said, it has to be uploaded on the system, so that has to be done. And whatever appeal, etc., is prepared, submission is prepared, and the documentation are prepared, that should be logically stored, so that can be retrieved when the matter is taken up by the tribunal. And jurisdiction has to be appropriately decided and filed, so that there are no further delays in terms of getting the matter listed. Financial planning is also very important, because 10% additional pre-deposit is required, though the same should be available, so that at the time of filing there is no hiccup in terms of pre-deposit, that approving authority is not available, signing authority is not available. So to avoid those last minute hassles, it needs to be planned properly. In terms of technological preparedness, the tax teams, if it is being handled in-house, the tax team should be properly trained, or if the appeals are being filed by authorized representative, proper coordination is done with them, so that they are also registered. And ERP, and if the entities are using any litigation tool, etc., that should be linked with the ERP, etc. And in terms of further, one of the important aspect for any dispute is the tax team, finance team, and the legal team should be aligned in terms of strategy, etc., so that the matter can be handled seamlessly. Next slide. Some of the unaddressed issues which are yet to be clarified, some of them I have already discussed, but few other key, it is not a comprehensive list, but some of the key issues are like it is said that identical question of law, if it is there, it will be taken up by principal bench, but there is no mechanism to track identical question of law which are pending. So that is something which we have to see how it is implemented, so that there is no, it is not that principal bench is also hearing a question of law which is also being heard by other state benches. So we'll have to see. Uh, Again, say similar link to that, there is no mechanism to track legal overlaps. So again, how it will be managed at a national level, that has to be seen. Another is binding nature of order across benches. Now, earlier in tribunal, there was larger bench concept, special bench concept, and if larger bench has passed an order across all the stat benches, that was mandate binding. In absence of such, because even the principal bench will be functioning as a division bench, and state bench will also have division bench, so it has to be seen how that judicial discipline is maintained in terms of following the orders, and there is no divergent views again at the tribunal level, because we have been struggling with that even at the advanced ruling stage. So how that will be avoided has to be seen. Another big question is that in absence of tribunal, people had reached out to high courts. Now, what will happen? Because in many cases, either writs are kept in abeyance, or in many cases, writs have been also admitted and interim orders have been passed also. So, how those will be addressed is a big question, and companies needs to consult and strategize their strategy in terms of how they want to proceed. That is something which has to be seen. Institutional and infrastructure readiness, again, as we discussed, entire thing is on digital platform. So how robust is the technical backbone of that has to be tested. Like we saw a lot of glitches when GST was implemented in the GST portal. So we'll have to see. Again, mode of hearing, as I said, right now there is no utility provided to kind of select whether I want to do physical hearing or virtual. So that also we have to see, because if matter is listed tomorrow and I cannot appear physically, I will have no choice but to take adjournment and then apply for a virtual hearing, and approval is required. So that also has to be seen how it will be implemented. So that is more from the operational side of it. So over to you, Krishan.
Thanks, Naren, for, I think, taking us through a detailed process. I think it was very important to identify what is the procedure required. Some of the issues which you highlighted about the preparedness also, are very, very critical. While we have time from here, I think the advice is that, we consult your teams legally, as well as your professional consultants or counsels, and take the call, because there are certain permutations and combinations by which you will probably be able to then take the next step of actually utilizing the benefit of GSTATs as they are operationalized. And the practical challenges continue to kind of be posed, and clarity will be obviously expected to be issued very, very soon. And some of these things we can take cue from past experiences from CSTAT, how they were operating, etc. But I think you highlighted a couple of very important points, and that brings me also to kind of come in terms of some of these questions which we have received from our on our from our members who had signed up, as well as some questions for the panel. So I'll bring in Naveen, Manoj here, as well as Naren. You stay in terms of I'll come back to you on certain other questions, but I'll start with Naveen. Naveen, you have been an expert from an industry standpoint, and you've handled multiple areas from a perspective of appeals dealing with different states, and jurisdictions dealing with state and center both. I think GSTAT is a very positive move. I think everybody was waiting for it. But my first question to you, Naveen, and thank you really for joining us here, is that your practical experience. What are the challenges that the companies were facing in previous dispute resolution framework, and what is the way that you expect GSTAT to make that process smoother and predictable?
Yeah, hi Krishan, thanks. So from the industry point of view, the challenges which we are facing is the law was interpreted differently by many different officers in multiple states, and also in same states, the interpretation is different based on central and state. So I think so with introduction of GSTAC tribunal, there will be some consistency in the rulings, there will be clarity in the orders, which can give a clarity to the down level officers when they handle the assessments. So I think that is more important from the industry point of view.
Right. And you see the operationalization of GSTAT also impacting taxpayers in any manner?
Sorry, I
Any
didn't get you.
practical experiences which you've had in terms of, the matters which have been pending and, with the
Yes, yes,
operationalization of
it will.
GSTAT?
It is. In fact, in our own case, there was a refund matter which was rejected by a commissioner, which we are not able to file in High Court because of lot of operational cost and operational issues involved. So that will help in taxpayer because the lower cost matter where the amount is not high, but technically we are strong. Okay, there we will look for a GSTAC to give a positive appeal. In fact, in our one of our cases where the commissioner appeals is not able to understand IBC law, there, I think so. GSTAX will come in and give us a lot of positive and right direction to see what is IBC, what is the recovery, without going to High Court because High Court has a lot of pendencies there.
And then High Court being obviously it's the question of law which actually reaches the High Court.
Yeah.
Automatically, it means that the final fact-finding authority is also GSTAT. So,
Yes.
not all the matters can go to High Court
Go
straight,
to
and
High
that's
Court.
what you were saying, that,
Yeah.
some of them may not be as, in terms of their impact, in terms of their quantum, and the call has to be taken. And, a lot of people have been waiting, including you and your
Correct.
company. And that's something which poses another opportunity for us to kind of go to the GSTAT and get our matters, finalized,
Finalized.
hopefully positively in terms of, if we are
Hmm.
strong on questions of fact and law. And I think the fact that this whole aspect also entails, you mentioned about cost, but it also entails a pre-deposit. So I know this something which is also very important, that this has been a debatable aspects about the GSTAT procedural rules, Manoj, and the additional 10% pre-deposit requirement. How do you see that impacting cash flows? Especially for mid-sized businesses already burdened with 10% deposit before the first appellate authority, which is Commissioner Appeals.
So, Krishan, when we study law, so in jurisprudence, there is a fundamental thing which says that justice must not only be done, but must also be seen to be done. We are talking about litigation where success rate for the government is 30%, less than 30%. And if we talk about exclusively for tribunal and above, the rate goes beyond, like below 18%. And in fact, in tribunal, it is around 17, 18%. And in such cases, it means that 80% cases, in 80% cases, the exchequer is expected to lose. And in such scenario, we are asking a taxpayer to pay 20% just to get justice. To me, it looks too much, too much. So one part I agree that there should be some pre-deposits, and that is required for two reasons. One, that of course you want to secure some portion of your revenue, and second, that it should work as some kind of roadblock for unnecessary litigation. So pre-deposits are necessary and it should be there, but 20% I believe it is too much. So definitely they should reconsider, and either they should have what we used to have earlier in the system where the 10% used to be the final amount, or they should have some mechanism by which in specific cases they can do away requirement of
Yeah.
pre-deposits. So that I believe is something they should look into.
I completely agree, Manoj. I think the 20% element is a very, very high cost in terms of holding your money for, litigating, at the cost of saying that, I'm on one side very strong on my, case, and I'm going to the second appeal because that's where I'm expecting relief. At the same time, I don't have a choice but to deposit this money. And on top of that, we also know how many such cases have gone into litigation at this stage, at least at the appellate stage initially, because of various practical issues which were arising in GST, which have remained pending in
Yeah,
many ways, right? For want of reconciliation, for mismatches, all of the money which is involved in that, sometimes, it may not be as big as it sounds, but it has a large issue in terms of, a person litigating to actually pay the amount of demand against that as a 20% amount. So I completely agree that point. But I think the point on pre-deposit links back to also saying that what happens to penalty cases for that matter. So where there's no tax demand per se, but only penalty amount are substantial. And again, we know that penalty is about showcasing mala fide, the intent to evade tax. So what do you think are the challenges to foresee when there's only a matter where penalty has been imposed?
To be honest, Kishan, I generally don't use that, but I would say it is ridiculous. Okay, so just think of a situation. A case has been initiated against a company, and the person who was employee or responsible for doing day-to-day work, and a personal penalty has been imposed. Now, if company doesn't support that particular person, how he or she is going to even file appeal against the order? Because penalty is equal to the amount of tax evaded.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are virtually denying justice to a person, because he or she may not go to be, he would not, even after they sell everything, all the assets, if they have that much of might, perhaps he or she would not be working in that organization. So suppose there is a demand of 10 crore and you are asking that person to pay 10 crore, is something ridiculous, like, or 1 crore. They cannot do that. They will not have that much of money. So it means they will never get justice. So perhaps they should look into, and as at the cost of repetition, there has to be a mechanism, at least in case of personal penalty, at least for the person who is working in the corporate, they should be exempted from this. You may have this for the promoters and all that. Again, even that should not be there, but if even at all you have to have, it should be to the promoters or who actually get benefited by that, and not for the people who work in that particular organization. So personal penalty is something they should minutely look into and do everything possible to ensure that he or she should be able to get justice.
No, absolutely. I think two things which come out of what we were discussing is about the 20% amount is one part where I think it seems to be exorbitant in terms of going for a matter to be addressed at GSTAT level, and the second one being clearly on penalty. I completely agree that there has to be some mechanism by which we should be targeted in terms of the proceedings which actually should be that penalty should be imposed, and what happens to the demand in person in terms of it being substantial or not substantial, but who to actually apply it to is very important. And I completely agree with that, because till now we've seen that there are varied cases where penalty proceedings have been initiated, and people are still bleeding with
Question,
demands which have
I
been
think
raised from
so.
that front.
More and more notices are coming under Section 74 because of time
Yes.
limit. And since it are coming under Section 74, department is issuing penalty. Because of the
No, I
time
agree.
limit, to increase the time limit, this is again an issue which is faced by the industry.
Yeah, I think that for that period at least it has continued. So
Yes.
hopefully that should get addressed. But I completely agree, Naveen. Naveen, I think we are talking about the part of saying that there is these will become operational, and we are hoping that the challenges in terms of addressal or remediation will happen very very quickly from here. What is your view? We've seen that matters have been listed. They have continued to be pending even for CSTAT. A lot of pendency was there earlier, and we've seen that it matters take too much time to get addressed even at a GSTAT level. What should one be looking at from the infrastructure and the constitution perspective? We've got the benches in place, and the e-court portal also being there, but do you really think that we are equipped to handle the kind of caseload from December?
See, my view is, see, every start is difficult. When e-invoicing came, the first thing was whether the portal will be able to handle e-invoice, whether there will be a QR code. The systems got jumped and again start. So my view is, at least we should get started. There will be always a turbulence, but sometime after 1 or 2 months, we will settle down and processes have to move, and the clarity will be there on the law. Because currently there are so many states and so many multiple issues which are coming, where, as Manoj mentioned, there's a lot of penalty clauses, all these things will be surely settled down during the time. But I think the better it starts faster, there will be a turbulence, but the things will settle down after the initial hiccups. That is my view.
What's your take, Manoj? If you look at it as a professionally, what's your take in terms of the kind of work, load we talked about, the dependency we talked about, how do you think what will we achieve in the next couple of years? What do you think? What's the vision?
So, to some extent, I agree with Naveen that every start is difficult, and we have seen the kind of problem we faced when GST was introduced. The system was not working. GSTN had a lot of problem, but gradually it got settled down. So, I'm expecting similar issues for GSTAT as well. Majorly on account of the data or the documents which are going to be uploaded, because we have seen that when we file any appeal, there are a lot of documents, a lot of supporting documents are to be filed, and many of our colleague lawyers, they tend to like to flood the bench with so many documents. So if the process continues, if they follow the same kind of pattern, then definitely we are going to have trouble. So one, that of course we'll have to wait and watch. Second, it would be better that in the interest of better functioning, tribunal should come out with a list of documents that can be uploaded, that has to be uploaded, and that which they should not upload into the portal would be a better thing, and would be better for administration.
Yeah, I think if there is a consistency by which the process is going to be followed, that will definitely also help, because that is very important across all benches. If similar matters are coming up, and we are able to, yeah, they are able to discuss that with each other. There is a way by which they are able to say that these matters have already been kind of taken up, and similar matters has been adjudicated. Then at the same time, I think these all things will become very important and will go a long way in terms of avoiding duplication and time on one side, and also at the other side, faster, immediate, and more consistent kind of an approach. I think that's what is needed from the learnings we've had all this while, and I think this is a very, very good opportunity for the judiciary to actually look at it from that perspective. So, and then looking back at this, I think going back to the GST dispute resolution framework, what do you think could have been done very more differently? I think we've talked about a couple of them. Anything which could have been done differently in terms of the efficiency and friendliness is what anything on that? Any thought from you, Naveen? Any thought from you, Manoj?
My
Naveen?
thought is, I think so. One is the pre-deposit side. This is my thought. Rather than putting so much cash or pre-deposit, they should allow guarantees, bank guarantees, which but without, of course, a reverse charge on it, because they will say this is again a services. So they should give us some non-funded mechanism. Otherwise, becoming a paying a cash deposit is always a challenge. I think so. Since they have done so much e-invoicing portal online, we have to move towards the corporate guarantee side, where if the assessee is winning the case, he does not have to encash corporate guarantee and again go back to office for claiming the refund. That is my view.
What's your take, Manoj?
I would say that instead of allowing all the appeals to be filed in one go, though they have given it as an advisory, but I said that it should have been made mandatory that this window is open for filing appeal for a particular period. That would have eased out like the kind of ways it is being handled by the portal, and it would have lessened the burden of the judiciary tribunal benches, and could have been easy disposal, in my opinion, rather than putting all eggs in one basket in one go, making things a bit difficult.
Yeah, and I think one more thing which Manoj is important, that with the mandatory e-filing of appeals from 15th November, how do you see that shift impacting taxpayers? Because in the wider ecosystem, while in direct tax, it's already happening. We are at the judiciary level, it's happening. What are the challenges and opportunities for digital transition to actually present? Will it make things easier, or you think again we'll be grappling with certain issues?
Oh, of course, digital filing, I would say, a very welcome move, and like they took time. I would say it is very late. They should have done it earlier. So it is definitely a good move, but asking taxpayer to file all pending appeal in a digital mode is something too much, and I don't think that they are going to achieve anything out of that. So whatever has already been filed, they should have disposed of, and for all new appeals, the digitization should have been done. So this is my opinion.
Yeah, because my sense is that it will again entail, load which will become suddenly, and it'll also be a burden on the taxpayers and the appellants to actually make this happen. And then again go back to saying that, now we have to look at digital filing and all the processes and filing have to be done and looked at
Yeah.
afresh. So I completely agree that this should be kind of done for new cases, and that's something which can be thought of while we have probably a month left from here in terms of this to be done. But and I think the part which also is important, and we were talking about it at some point of time, and all of us just you mentioned it somewhere, is that the matters which are pending at a high court level, and this is also a question which has come in the by from one of the audiences, is that the matters which are pending in high court, which were filed earlier when GSTAT was not operational, what happens to those? How will that be addressed, in terms of any direction or interim orders, which, Naren is also talking about as one of the questions to be addressed. What we can expect, to happen as we now operationalize GSTAT on the High Court matters, which will ultimately would have moved back to GSTAT?
So Krishan, apparently under the law, there is no restriction per se on the High Court that they cannot continue with the matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Most of the time, in the interest of judicial discipline, this is self-imposed restriction that the High Court or the Supreme Court will not get into anything where alternate remedial mechanism is available. Okay, so but at all said and done, we know that these GST things have burdened High Court, and that is impacting things a lot. So, in my opinion, wherever things are pending and to be decided by the tribunal and not challenging, not being challenged, like any specific provisions are not being challenged, then in my gut feel says that the High Court may remand those back to the tribunal or instruct the appellant to file appeal before the tribunal rather than going ahead with that. So in my opinion, yes, wherever they think that it should have been filed only because tribunal was not operational, would be remanded back to the tribunal.
Yeah, and nothing stops them from, I think, going ahead and deciding a matter, but that all depends upon whether it fulfills the requirement of being substantial question of law or question of law, plus, the load which actually has been
Yeah.
taken by the high courts also is important to look at. One more question, and Manoj, I'll take probably last question from the audience because it's something which is also important. When identical issues, and I think this is what Naveen was also talking about, there are identical issues which are pending in two more states benches where question of law is involved. The president will decide if the principal bench will take them up. And the question is that how would a question of law first go to state bench and not principal bench directly?
Again, we have to wait, as Naren
Yeah.
mentioned, we'll have to wait for clear-cut guidelines. As of now, I cannot say that this matter will go to principal bench, this matter will not go to the principal bench. We'll have to wait and for clear-cut guidelines, and I'm sure there would be. So to avoid confusion.
Yeah, I think this is something which will over a period of time unfold, and this is
Yeah.
something which will remain open for some time as we discuss some other points also. But I think lastly from a compliance readiness standpoint, and I'll bring you Naren back here. What should taxpayers be really doing in terms of preparing for GSTAT?
Thanks, Krishan. And in the interest of time, I'll just keep it very brief. So I think one, get all the facts collated because tribunal is the final fact-finding authority. All the supporting documents needs to be collated. And one important aspect is that if anything is in regional language or something is not legible, needs to be translated and which has to be agreed by both party or at least certified to be true translation. So those things needs to be taken care of. And strategize in terms of question of law, question of fact, which is the jurisdiction. So I think lot of pre-filing work has to be done in terms of reviewing the open litigations, which are factual, which are technical in nature. If factual, all the facts, readiness, all the supporting documents which needs to be prepared, and then go for the appeal. The staggering the windows are not mandatory. It is recommendatory. I can delay. I cannot prepone because system is
Yeah.
not allowing. So we will have time. So we should not just rush because the staggering no window is there and I need to file. I have outer window of that. But if I'm fully ready, I have done the homework, I'm ready, avail the benefit of the window. So I think that is very important to get the full review done.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. I think there was really, really good insights which we discussed as far as the operationalization of GSTAT is concerned. I think to summarize, we all probably would agree that it's a very, very welcome move. We just hope that there is more and more consistency in the process. There are certain things which we still expect that government and the tax judiciary should look at specifically from a perspective of pre-deposit, looking at certain specific cases of penalty and this shift from High Court to kind of coming back to GSTAT, something of those sort. But I think in nutshell, I think it's a very, very positive step now, long awaited. All of us have been waiting for this to happen. I'm sure the industry and the audience will probably be kind of, as you mentioned, be getting GSTAT ready is what we will say. And I think that's that. This is a time to strategize. Take your time and implement. We have time to do that. Take that time. Go ahead and let's hope that this is a outcome which is positive and it ultimately results in mitigating the litigation which goes to the next level. Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Manoj, Naren. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Look forward to having similar sessions in future. Keep yourself tuned in and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you. Thank you.
everyone.